Catherine's fingers strummed rhythmically against the armrest of her gilded chair, the faint strains of a court musician's epic melody drifting through the hall. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, swept across the room, but her mind was far from the glittering chandeliers and murmuring nobles. Peter's drunken laughter echoed faintly in the distance, punctuated by the clatter of a dropped goblet. She didn't flinch. She'd grown used to the sound, his heavy steps, the slurred boasts about Prussia, the stench of spilled wine. He was a man who could not see past his own whims, a ruler who treated the empire as a toy. Catherine's lips curled into a wry smile, cold and calculating. Peter barely spared her a glance, except to criticize or mock. His face, perpetually flushed from drink, held no allure for her, and his mind, such as it was, never held her interest. She had learned to endure his cruelty with the quiet grace of a predator biding its time. But Catherine did not endure passively. Her eyes burned with ambition. Lovers came and went, each one carefully chosen, each one playing their part. A whispered confession here, a forged alliance there, a network of possibilities woven in silk sheets and stolen moments. They had to be useful, of course, intelligent, but not so much as to challenge her, loyal, but aware of their role, instruments. Nothing more. Peter's obsession with war and Prussia was his greatest weakness. While he revealed in battle strategies, Catherine strategized in silence. The throne was wasted on him. He was a fool, clutching power he neither earned nor deserved. Her knuckles whitened as her fingers stilled. Her pulse quickened as her plan crystallized in her mind. Peter had to go. For the good of Russia, for the good of her destiny.
Wait, are we talking about Catherine II, the Great?
We sure do.
That scene just there sounded a bit invented, to be honest.
Well, maybe I added a bit of creative elements to it.
Creative elements? Julia, she seemed like a heartless block of ice.
Well, maybe that's not entirely true, but it's how she was often portrayed.
Well then, tell me how she was really. And what's up with this crime plot you hid in there anyway? What happened to Peter III?
We will come to that right away. But let's first greet our listeners.
How scandalous.
No way.
I didn't know that.
You're kidding me.
No.
Tell me more about it.
History Gossip, the podcast spilling the tea on history's wildest stories, iconic royal drama, and the most chaotic events.
Welcome everyone to the newest episode of History Gossip. Here we track down bizarre and juicy stories, habits or events in history, mostly about royals. Today we talk about Catherine the Great, Tsar of Russia and the only woman who held the title the Great. I am Julia, your host for today, and
I'm Carla, your co-host. A warm welcome from me too. Julia, I'm split about what is going to happen. Either a juicy story about her affairs or a thriller.
Well, maybe both. But do not worry, there is more to her than just a calculated egomaniac.
Well, actually it would be a good story too.
Let's see what you're gonna say at the end.
Reality check.
The first scene I described was coming from my imagination. It is based on how the Tsar is still sometimes described. Catherine was not just the only woman with the title the Great. In Russia, in times of absolutism, she was also the only woman who ruled alone without her husband after he died. She actually had no claim to the throne, but she reigned Russia for 35 years.
Slay girl. I can't wait to find out how she pulled that off.
We'll uncover it all soon, but first, let's get back to the beginning. Did you know she wasn't Russian at all? She was actually German.
I think I heard something about it.
Her real name was Sophie Auguste Friederike von Anhalt-Zerbst, born in 1729. Her father was a poor prince, more title than fortune, and she grew up in Prussia, which is now part of Poland. Even though her family wasn't wealthy, they had powerful connections. From a young age, she was groomed for marriage. Her education was intense. French, dancing, etiquette, the whole package. But her childhood, far from happy. Her mother resented her because, well, she wanted a boy.
So she could have a shot at a throne?
No, Carla. Her father was a poor prince. No throne, no kingdom, just a fancy title. But German princesses were popular picks for Russian nobility back then. They weren't politically threatening and their reputation were impeccable. Sophie was no exception. At just 14, she was sent to Prussia to marry Peter III, the heir to the throne.
14? Seriously?
Yeah, he was around the same age though, so small blessings, I guess. Oh, and fun fact, they were second cousins.
Great. Second cousins? Royal family drama strikes again. At least they were the same age this time.
Yeah, right. She moved to Russia, and after about a year and a half, they got married in 1745. She converted to the Russian Orthodox Church, which is when she had to change her name to Katarina, or in Russian, Yekaterina Alexeyevna. We know her as Catherine. She didn't just stop there, though. She threw herself into learning about Russia, its people, its culture, its politics. She even learned the Russian language, which wasn't something she had to do. She did it because she wanted to, and maybe because she really wanted to rule the country, to be honest.
Damn, she was dedicated.
She really was dedicated. Unlike her husband, Peter had no real interest in Russia, his own country. He was obsessed with Prussia instead.
Wait, that's Catherine's home country?
Yeah, exactly. He was obsessed with a country, not with her. He was actually born in Prussia too. His aunt Elizabeth, who was Tsar before him, and Catherine, adopted him. Their marriage was a disaster. They had no connection and he didn't even try. People say Peter was, well, let's just call it immature. These days we'd probably call him a bit odd. He was fixated on war, the military, and unfortunately, alcohol.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. In the beginning, Catherine actually tried to bond with him, but he made her play these weird, endless soldier games. He even forced the servants to join in. Imagine that. Grown adults marching around like toy soldiers just to humor him.
Ew, immediate ick. Playing war for hours? No thank you. And poor Catherine, with all that dedication, she deserved so much better than that.
Yeah, it was not good. She lived in this loveless, probably sexless marriage. At least in her memoirs, she claimed she genuinely tried to make it work. What's tricky about Catherine is how hard it is to pin down her character. She supposedly rewrote parts of her memoirs to fit the political climate at the time, so it's tough to know what's true. Opinions about her are all over the place. Some people paint her as cold, power-hungry, and almost narcissistic. They see her as a strong-willed but kind ruler who cared about the Russian people and just wanted to be loved. She loved being in love.
That's wild. Those are totally different opinions. I guess the truth lies in between?
Yeah. Probably. Some say so and so. Catherine is often portrayed as wildly promiscuous. There are stories about her having endless affairs, hosting orgies, and even owning erotic furniture and art. But that's mostly an exaggeration. While she did have lovers, she wasn't as promiscuous as the rumors suggest.
So all the nymphomaniac stuff, just gossip?
Exactly. She did have lovers, sure, but not in the chaotic way people imagined. A lot of historians actually describe her as more of a serial monogamist, one lover at a time, usually someone she deeply trusted or admired. The rest is just sensationalism.
Classic, a powerful woman, so obviously people had to invent stories to cheer her down.
Pretty much. And even though she was mostly monogamous in her relationships, she still had multiple partners over her lifetime and wasn't married to any of them. In general, I think a big part of why those rumors are so popular is because she was a woman.
They basically slut-shamed her. That's awful.
Totally. And it wasn't just gossip, it was strategic. The rumors were used to humiliate her and undermine her power. She was hugely successful and incredibly powerful, which made her a target. A lot of those stories came from deeply misogynistic assumptions.
Ugh, the patriarchy strikes again.
Girl, I feel you. Since we are already talking about her affairs, are you ready to hear more about Catherine's lovers?
What kind of question is that? Of course, spill the tea.
Okay. Let's dive in. Catherine's affair started about 7 years into her marriage with Peter. But for now, let's focus on the two most important lovers in her life, Grigory Orlov and Grigory Potyomkin. Catherine wasn't just picking lovers for fun. She used a concept called favoritism. Her lovers weren't just romantic partners, they had to bring something else to the table. Skills, influence, competence.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Exactly. Take Orlov and Potyomkin, for example. Both were incredibly influential in the military, and they helped Catherine politically and strategically. Her favorites weren't just for show. There were advisors and allies. But here's the key thing. No matter how much influence they had, Catherine always stayed in control. She was still the one in charge and made the final decision.
She wanted to make sure she was the one holding the reins. Smart.
Totally. That's probably why some people describe her as cold or calculating. There was definitely some strategy behind her choice of lovers, but that doesn't mean she didn't have real feelings for them or that she only used them. It's more like she balanced her emotions with her ambition.
Makes sense. She wasn't about to let anyone take charge of her life or her throne.
Let's start with Grigory Orlov, the man who helped Catherine overthrow Peter III and become Tsar of Russia. After Peter became Tsar, things got worse for her. He threatened to divorce her, banish her from Russia, and humiliated her in public. She'd had enough.
I can't blame her.
Same. In 1761, she started an affair with Grigory Orlov, who was an officer in the military and part of the Russian nobility. Together, they began plotting a coup. It wasn't just the two of them, though. Orlov's brothers were heavily involved, along with key members of the Guard and even representatives of the Orthodox Church. They worked for weeks, convincing all the right people to back Catherine.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Bold is an understatement. In 1762, Catherine gave the order to imprison Peter III, claiming he was a danger to the Russian Empire. And here's the wild part. He didn't even fight back. He just accepted it.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yep, he'd only been reigning for about 6 months and Catherine had already turned the tide. She even managed to get the population on her side. That's huge, especially since, like I mentioned earlier, she didn't technically have any claim to the throne.
Julia, this is starting to feel like a political thriller.
Oh, just wait. It gets even more mysterious. A few weeks after Peter was imprisoned, he died.
What? Okay, this just turned into a full-blown conspiracy.
Right? The circumstances of his death are still unknown. Some reports suggest he had marks on his body that pointed to murder. But then there's another theory that he simply died of a heart attack, and one of the most popular stories, that it was an accident triggered by a fight with the Orlov brothers.
I did not see this story going in that direction. What did Catherine know about all this?
That's the big question, isn't it? Historians are completely split. There is no solid evidence that she was directly involved in his death, but for those who believe that he was murdered, they think Catherine at least knew about it. On the other hand, if it was just a fight gone wrong, there's a chance she had nothing to do with it at all.
So the whole Catherine killed her husband thing is just a rumor?
Exactly. But it's one of the most enduring rumors about her, partly because it fits the narrative of her as a ruthless, power-hungry ruler.
My brain is exploding. So many theories, so much drama.
Honestly, Catherine's life is like a soap opera, a political thriller, and a mystery novel all rolled into one. I know I'm getting a little sidetracked, but this part of the story is key to the understanding how she became Tsar and the role her lovers played in that.
Did she and Olaf stay together? He sounded like a keeper, supporting her like that.
He stayed by her side for almost 12 years, but eventually they separated because Catherine didn't like how his political views were shifting. That said, she was still incredibly generous to him after they parted ways. She gave him wealth, valuable gifts, and even the Marble Palace in St. Petersburg. He also helped him advance his military career. There was no bad blood between them, and he remained in the Guard. In general, Catherine always stayed friendly with her lovers, even after they separated.
Huh? That doesn't sound as cold as they made her out to be.
Exactly. Catherine was always quite generous with her lovers, which is why it's hard for me to buy into the idea that she just used people. But now, let's move on to her other important lover, and the man she's said to have truly loved. Grigory Potyomkin. Even the historians who think Catherine was a bit calculated still believe that their relationship was genuine.
Finally, a real romance.
She definitely deserved that. The affair started in 1774, and Grigory Potyomkin was a big deal. He was a field marshal who helped Catherine expand Russia's border to the Black Sea, conquering territory from the Ottoman Empire. They exchanged passionate love letters full of deep affection. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when they got together and when they separated, but what's clear is that they stayed in touch until his death, always holding each other in high regard.
Wait, are you telling me they secretly married?
Yep. That's the rumor. Some believe they secretly married and even had a child together. Catherine also gave him his own realm, what was then called Taurida, which we now know as Crimea.
Oh dear, that's a lot to process.
I know, right? Before I share a few more little facts about Catherine, I just want to quickly touch on her reign style.
Oh yeah, we never really got into that.
Catherine was a ruler of the Enlightenment. Education was super important to her. She introduced the system for elementary schools and even founded the first school for girls in Russia. Of course, these schools were only for those who could afford them, so the peasants didn't exactly benefit. She also brought culture and art into Russia and is behind the art collection at the Hermitage Museum. She tried to reduce serfdom, but at the end, she didn't succeed because the nobility was against it and she needed their support. So she acted in their favor. Oh, and she reorganized the law system too.
Wow, that's a lot of political stuff.
I know, I'm giving you the super quick version. There's way more depth to all of this, but I didn't want to skip mentioning her political style entirely.
Well, and to be honest, I was more into the spicy stuff anyway.
Fair enough. Before we wrap up, do you want to hear some random Catherine facts?
Oh, definitely. This could be perfect for a pub quiz.
Did you know that she was super into philosophy and even became friends with Voltaire?
Wait, the Voltaire?
Yep, that Voltaire. Although they were more like pen pals, they never actually met in person. But Catherine was a huge fan of French philosophy and admired thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau.
That also explains her style of reigning, which you mentioned before.
Exactly. Okay, next. Firstborn son, the one with Peter III. Well, he was probably not actually Peter's son.
Wait, what? You're just throwing this out there now? In the fun fact section of this episode? Julia!
I know. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. It's believed that Peter never consummated the marriage. There were even rumors about him being impotent.
That's a very spicy fact to drop at the end.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, moving on. Catherine was really into the latest medical advancements, like smallpox vaccination.
Vaccination? In the 18th century?
I couldn't believe it either. But yep, she even made it compulsory for the population.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Oh, and as for all those horse rumors, well, you know exactly what I'm talking about. No need to describe it. They are obviously not true.
I mean, who actually believes that stuff?
Seriously, right? Anyway, the last thing isn't directly about Catherine, but have you ever heard of Potemkin villages?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's actually used today to describe something that's a false front or pretense. There was a rumor that when Catherine visited the Crimea, Potemkin's realm, he supposedly built fake villages to impress her. People say they were just painted facades, but in reality, he was actually building real villages there.
Oh, that's where I've heard the name before.
Alright, Carla, time to finish the coffee. Let's revisit the scene from the beginning and compare it with what we've learned today.
The one where she came off as a power-hungry egomaniac? Yeah, I remember that one.
Okay. I admit that wasn't the most flattering portrayal, but let's wrap up today's episode. The truth about Catherine's character is still up for debate. In my opinion, she was a brilliant strategist, always thinking ahead and acting in her best interest. I wouldn't go as far as calling her cold or narcissistic.
I guess we'll never know the truth, huh?
Probably not, but what we do know for sure is that she masterminded the coup against Peter III, and for the details of his death, those are still unclear. The most widely accepted theory is that it was an accident and Catherine wasn't involved. What is also for sure is that she and Potemkin really did love each other.
Well, at least there was real love in the mix. You've left us with a lot of mysteries to chew on, Julia.
I know, right? Hopefully the story kept you intrigued though. And by now, I hope everyone's finished their coffee because that's all for today's episode.
But don't worry, we will be back soon with even juicier stories. See you then.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to History Gossip. This episode was written by your host, Julia John, co-host Carla Vordermeier, concept and project management Lena Jansa and Melanie Schönberger, editing Melanie Schönberger. History Gossip is a project developed by students of the University of Vienna.